In 1956, General Motors revealed a car that looked less like a luxury cruiser and more like a fighter jet built for the highway. The futuristic machine was called the Buick Centurion, a stunning space-age concept wrapped in sleek fiberglass, dramatic wing-shaped fenders, and a giant transparent bubble canopy that gave drivers a full panoramic view of the road. But the real shock came inside. Instead of a traditional rearview mirror, GM installed an experimental television camera in the trunk that streamed live footage directly onto a screen in the dashboard, technology so advanced it looked decades ahead of its time. To the public, the Centurion looked like the future had finally arrived. But once the car left the bright auto show floor and faced the real American sun, the dream quickly started falling apart. The massive clear canopy trapped heat inside the cabin like a greenhouse, pushing temperatures to unbearable levels, while harsh sunlight created dangerous glare across the curved acrylic roof. Drivers weren't cruising in comfort. They were fighting heat, distortion, and visibility problems every second behind the wheel. The Buick Centurion became one of the most beautiful and ambitious concept cars ever created. But it also proved that sometimes the future can arrive long before the world is actually ready for it. To understand why the Buick Centurion stunned the world in 1956, you have to remember what most cars looked like back then. Nearly every vehicle on the road was bulky, boxy, and built around thick steel pillars that supported the roof. But General Motors wanted something completely different. Inspired by military jet fighters like the famous F-86 Sabre, GM designers created a car that looked like it belonged on a runway instead of a highway. The Centurion was built from lightweight fiberglass and finished in a striking red and white paint scheme that made it impossible to ignore. Its sweeping fenders resembled aircraft wings, while the rear tapered into a jet-like tail design straight out of the space age. But the feature that truly stole the show was the massive transparent bubble canopy. Instead of using traditional roof pillars, designers used a clear acrylic dome that gave the driver an almost uninterrupted 360-degree view of the road. Sitting inside the car felt less like driving a Buick and more like sitting in the cockpit of a futuristic aircraft. And the technology inside was even more unbelievable. Since there was no practical place for a normal rearview mirror, GM engineers replaced it with one of the world's earliest automotive camera systems. A small black and white television camera was hidden inside the trunk, sending a live video feed directly to a screen mounted in the dashboard. In 1956, this wasn't just advanced, it felt almost impossible. The Buick Centurion wasn't simply a concept car. It was GM's vision of what the future of driving could become. But the moment the auto show spotlights were turned off and the Buick Centurion was wheeled out onto the burning asphalt of the real world, the utopian dream of the bubble-top jetliner collapsed into a physical nightmare. The single greatest feature of the car, that magnificent, seamless acrylic canopy, instantly transformed from a triumph of space-age engineering into a devastating safety hazard. In the mid-1950s, the specialized blocking coatings and advanced tinting technologies that we take for granted today simply did not exist. As a result, the massive, curved, clear dome functioned exactly like a giant, high-powered magnifying glass. The moment the vehicle sat beneath the direct rays of the American sun, solar radiation poured into the cabin unabated, bouncing off the bright interior surfaces and trapping the heat inside an inescapable tight loop. Within a matter of minutes, the internal cockpit temperatures would skyrocket, frequently breaching a staggering 140 degrees Fahrenheit. To make matters worse, automotive air conditioning during this era was in its absolute infancy. The primitive cooling systems of the 1950s were bulky, inefficient, and engineered to cool traditional insulated steel cabins. They stood absolutely no chance against a rolling glass greenhouse that was constantly absorbing maximum solar heat. Drivers quickly found themselves drenched in sweat, breathing in suffocating, stagnant air, and fighting off the immediate, dangerous onset of heat exhaustion. But the extreme, blistering temperature was only half the problem. The severe curvature of the thick acrylic dome created a massive optical nightmare. As sunlight hit the curved glass from different angles throughout the day, it bent and distorted the driver's vision, projecting blinding, multi-directional streaks of white-hot glare directly into their eyes. At highway speeds, this visual distortion was incredibly perilous, hiding oncoming traffic, blurring lane markers, and completely blinding the operator at critical intersections. Operating the Centurion wasn't an exhilarating, futuristic flight down the open road. It was a grueling, agonizing test of physical endurance that left drivers completely exhausted, physically overheated, and visually blinded by the very machine meant to liberate them. As the test reports filed back into the corporate headquarters, the atmosphere inside General Motors turned from immense pride to cold, hard panic. The legal and safety departments quickly realized that the Buick Centurion was a catastrophic multi-million-dollar liability waiting to happen. If a driver fainted from heat stroke while cruising down an interstate, or became momentarily blinded by a flash of distorted glare and plowed into a family station wagon, the resulting public relations disaster could permanently ruin the reputation of the entire Buick brand. General Motors was a corporate empire built on consumer trust, and they simply could not risk marketing a vehicle that was a verified safety hazard to the public. Furthermore, the revolutionary closed-circuit television system, while brilliant on paper, was plagued by primitive 1950s vacuum tube technology. The trunk-mounted camera would frequently overheat, causing the dashboard screen to cut out completely or dissolve into a wall of unreadable static, leaving the driver completely blind to anything happening behind them. Faced with a mounting list of fatal design flaws and an engineering department that admitted they could not bypass the laws of basic physics, corporate executives quietly pulled the plug. The grand, heavily publicized dream of an entire fleet of bubble-top highway jetliners was instantly killed. The Buick Centurion project was completely canceled, and the lone functional prototype was swept away into the restricted depths of the GM Heritage Center, hidden far from public eyes. Instead of revolutionizing the world with jet canopies, Detroit's styling studios immediately retreated back to safe, traditional, insulated steel roofs and sturdy metal pillars. The futuristic bubble car was dead, buried under the realization that human survival could never be sacrificed for the sake of space-age style. The 1956 Buick Centurion was a breathtaking, beautiful mistake, a magnificent piece of mobile art that dared to dream of a sci-fi future, but completely forgot about basic human survival. It remains a stark reminder of an unconstrained era when automotive designers were completely free to chase the absolute limits of imagination, even if it meant building a literal, rolling greenhouse oven. While the dream of the bubble-top jet car died on the scorching asphalt of the 1950s, the raw ambition behind it laid the groundwork for the high-tech, camera-assisted vehicles we drive today. It forces us to appreciate the wild, dangerous steps it took to get here, and the incredible sacrifices made along the way. So after hearing the story of the 1956 Buick Centurion, would you actually have been brave enough to drive this futuristic bubble-top machine on a real highway? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I genuinely love reading your opinions and discussing these forgotten pieces of automotive history with you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the wildest concept cars ever created, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the strange and fascinating experiments hidden inside automotive history. And trust me, this story is only the beginning. Click on the video now appearing on your screen to uncover the unbelievable story of the futuristic 1960s jet-powered semi-truck that was considered so radical, parts of the project were quietly erased from history. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.